Varric stood on the observation deck of the Coalition warship, his crystalline body reflecting the cold light of distant stars. He had seen many battles in his long life. He had witnessed the fall of entire civilizations, but never had he seen the Coalition lose so badly. The war against the Ravagers had been going on for 3 cycles now. The insectoid swarm moved from system to system, consuming everything in their path. Planets, stations, fleets, nothing stopped them. The Ravagers did not negotiate. They did not take prisoners. They only destroyed and moved forward. Varric's own people, the Kalthari, had lost 12 colony worlds. Their crystalline warriors were strong, able to focus energy through their bodies like living weapons. But the Ravagers came in such numbers that even the strongest Kalthari shattered under the endless assault. The Voss tried next. They brought their floating war cities, massive structures that drifted through space on methane clouds. Their technology was advanced, their tactics sound. The Ravagers tore through them in days. The Droneth, covered in natural armor that could withstand plasma fire, made their stand at the Kelvin Gate. They lasted longer than most. But when the Ravagers learned to attack their joints, even the mighty Droneth fell. Now the Coalition was desperate. They sent messages to every known species in the galaxy. Join us or die alone. Most species were already dead or hiding in the far reaches of space. Then the humans answered. Varric remembered the day the message came through. The Council had been arguing about their next retreat when a simple transmission appeared on all channels. "This is Earth Defense Force. We received your call. We're coming to help." No one knew much about humans. They came from a small blue world in an unremarkable system. They had only joined galactic society 50 cycles ago. Their technology was average. Their physical abilities seemed weak compared to most species. The Council accepted their help anyway. They needed every soldier they could get. Varric was assigned as military observer to the human contingent. It was his job to document their tactics and capabilities. He expected to write a short report about a brave but doomed species. When the human ships arrived at the Coalition staging area, Varric went to meet them. The first thing he noticed was how small their vessels were. Kalthari ships were grown from living crystal, massive and beautiful. Voss ships were like floating palaces. Human ships looked like metal boxes with engines attached. The humans came aboard the Coalition command ship for the initial briefing. Varric watched them walk down the docking ramp and felt something close to pity. They were so soft. No scales, no armor plating, no crystalline structure. Just thin skin covering fragile bones. They wore artificial armor, which told Varric everything he needed to know. Any species that needed to build their protection was not built for war. The human commander was a male called Captain Han. He was tall for his species, but still shorter than most Droneth. His hair was dark, his eyes sharp. He carried himself with confidence that seemed unearned. With him came Lieutenant Nari, a female with quick movements and watchful eyes. Sergeant Tay followed, a stocky male who seemed built more solidly than the others. But even he looked weak compared to a Kalthari warrior. The briefing room was crowded with Coalition officers. Varric took his position in the corner, his crystalline form nearly invisible against the wall. He preferred to observe without being observed. Captain Han approached the holographic display at the center of the room. "Thank you for accepting our assistance," he said in perfect Coalition standard. "I know you don't know much about us. Let me fix that." The hologram changed to show Earth. It was a beautiful world, mostly water with green and brown land masses. "This is our home," Han continued. "One planet, 7 billion people. And we've been fighting each other for our entire history." A Voss commander made a sound like escaping gas, their version of laughter. "You fight among yourselves? And you think this qualifies you to fight the Ravagers?" Han smiled. It was not a friendly expression. "We've perfected the art of killing. We just usually practice on each other." He pulled up tactical displays. "The Ravagers are a hive mind species, correct? They operate on instinct and overwhelming numbers?" "Correct," said the Kalthari general, her voice like chimes. "They do not fear death. They do not retreat. They simply attack until everything is consumed." "Good," Han said. The word hung in the air. Good? What species heard about a fearless enemy and said good? Lieutenant Nari stepped forward. "We've analyzed all available data on Ravager tactics. They're predictable. They rely on shock and numbers, but they don't adapt mid-battle." "They don't need to adapt," the Voss commander said. "They win through attrition." "So did we," Sergeant Tay said quietly. "For 10,000 years, we won through attrition. We're good at it." The briefing continued. The humans outlined their proposed tactics. Standard military doctrine, nothing revolutionary. Varix took notes, but found nothing impressive. These humans seemed competent, but unremarkable. As the meeting ended, Varix approached Captain Han. "I am Observer Varix. I will be documenting your forces in combat." Han extended his hand, a human greeting Varix had read about. Varix touched it briefly with one crystalline appendage. The human's skin was warm, so different from his own cold structure. "Welcome aboard, Observer," Han said. "I hope you find us interesting." "I am sure you will perform adequately," Varix replied. It seemed kind to give them some encouragement. Han's smile widened. "Adequately. I like that. We'll try to live up to that high standard." Later, Varix walked through the human section of the ship. He wanted to see how they prepared for battle. The Kalthari meditated, focusing their energy. The Dronith tested their armor. The Voss sang their death songs just in case. The humans? They were laughing. Varix found a group of human soldiers sitting in a circle, playing some kind of game with cards. They were betting rations on the outcome. When one male, Private Kai according to his uniform, won the round, the others groaned and threw their cards at him. "Don't you fear the coming battle?" Varix asked. They looked up at him. Private Kai shrugged. "Sure, but we'll be scared tomorrow too. Might as well enjoy tonight." Another soldier, a female called Corporal Yuna, smiled. "Besides, the Ravagers should be scared of us." "Why?" Varix asked. "You are smaller than them, weaker. They have natural weapons. They outnumber you." "True," Yuna said, "but they've never fought humans before. They don't know what we can do." "What can you do?" The humans looked at each other. Kai spoke first. "We can refuse to die, even when we should." Varix didn't understand, but he would. Soon enough, he would understand everything. The next day, they received word. The Ravagers were attacking Thresh 9, a mining world in the outer colonies. It was time for the humans to prove themselves. As the ships prepared to jump to hyperspace, Varix watched Captain Han address his troops over the comm system. "Remember your training, watch each other's backs, and show these bugs why Earth grew scared of us first." Varix's sensors picked up something strange in the human bio readings. Their heart rates were elevated. Their bodies were producing combat hormones. They were afraid, but they were smiling. The ships jumped. The battle was coming, and Varix was about to learn why the galaxy should fear the soft species from the blue world. The sky above Thresh 9 was the color of rust and blood. Varix had never seen such a hostile world. The air was thin but breathable. The ground was hard rock with patches of toxic moss. This was not a place anyone would choose to live. But the minerals beneath the surface were valuable, so the Coalition had built mining operations here. Now the Ravagers wanted it. The first wave hit before dawn. Varix watched from his position on a ridge overlooking the valley. The Ravagers came like a black tide across the landscape. They were insectoid creatures, each one the size of a Dronith warrior. Their carapaces were thick and dark. Their mandibles could tear through metal, and they came in thousands. The Kalthari held the center line. Their crystalline bodies gleamed as they focused energy into devastating beams. The light cut through the first ranks of Ravagers. Bodies fell, smoking and shattered, but more came, always more. Varric saw the Kalthari line waver. A warrior near the front took too many hits. His crystalline structure cracked, then shattered completely. He fell into glittering fragments. 2 more Kalthari rushed to fill the gap. The Ravagers pushed forward. On the left flank, the Voss floated above the battlefield in their armored suits. They fired down with precision weapons. Each shot found its target. But there were too many targets. A swarm of Ravagers learned to leap. They brought down a Voss soldier, tearing through his suit. Methane leaked out. The Voss suffocated in oxygen-rich air. The line was breaking. Varric turned his sensors to the right flank. This was where the humans had positioned themselves. Captain Han had requested the eastern ridge, a rocky outcrop that jutted into the valley. It was a difficult position to defend. The Ravagers could attack from 3 sides. The coalition had agreed, thinking the humans would be overrun quickly. At least their sacrifice would buy time for the main forces. But the eastern ridge still stood. Varric focused his visual sensors. What he saw confused him. The humans were fighting in a way he had never witnessed before. They did not stand in formation like the Kalthari. They did not float above the battle like the Voss. They moved constantly, running from position to position, firing in short bursts, never staying still. And they were screaming. Not screams of fear. Something else. War cries, challenges. Some of them were shouting words Varric's translator couldn't process. Apparently human curse words that had no coalition equivalent. Private Kai was in the thick of it. Varric watched the young soldier take up position behind a boulder. A Ravager charged him. Kai fired until his weapon ran dry, then pulled out a knife, an actual blade of metal, and stabbed the creature in its joints where the carapace was weakest. The Ravager fell. Another came. Kai was still reloading. The Ravager's claw caught him across the chest. Varric saw the armor tear, saw blood, red human blood, spray across the rocks. Kai should have fallen. Any other species would have retreated to medical support. The wound was serious. Instead, Kai made a sound like an angry animal and threw himself at the Ravager. He had no weapon now except his hands and rage. He gouged at its eyes with his fingers until it released him. Then he grabbed his weapon and shot it at point-blank range. "Medic!" someone shouted. "Busy!" Kai shouted back. He was still bleeding, but he took up position again and kept firing. Varric couldn't believe what his sensors were telling him. The human's vital signs were critical. He had suffered what should be a fatal wound, but he was fighting harder now than before. On another part of the ridge, Lieutenant Nari was coordinating a counterattack. Varric watched her direct fire teams with quick, efficient commands. She moved like a dancer, always one step ahead of danger. Then a Ravager broke through. Its claw swept in an arc, too fast to dodge. It caught Nari's left arm and tore it away at the shoulder. Varric expected her to collapse, expected screaming, expected death. Nari looked at her missing arm. Her face went pale. Then she picked up her weapon with her remaining hand and shot the Ravager in the head. "Medic to position 7, she said into her comm. Her voice was steady. "I need immediate cauterization." She didn't stop fighting. A human medic, identified as Corporal Rin, ran to her position under fire. She sprayed something on the wound that sealed it immediately. Nari nodded her thanks and kept giving orders. She had lost an arm and she was still commanding troops. Varric checked his sensors again. They had to be malfunctioning. But no, the readings were accurate. The human was operating on adrenaline and something the database called shock. She should be unconscious. She should be dying. She was calling in artillery strikes. Sergeant Tay's voice came over the command channel. "We're holding, but we need support on the eastern ridge. We've got wounded who won't stop fighting, and it's making the defensive positions unpredictable." Captain Han's reply was immediate. "Negative. Let them fight. The Ravagers have never seen anything like this. Use it." Varix understood then. The humans weren't just refusing to acknowledge their wounds, they were using them. The Ravagers operated on instinct. They expected wounded prey to flee or die. When the prey attacked instead, their simple minds couldn't process it. The battle raged for 6 hours. The Kalthari center finally broke when their commander fell. The survivors retreated to secondary positions. The Voss left flank pulled back when their atmospheric filters began to fail. The human right flank held. When the Ravagers finally withdrew, a temporary retreat to regroup, Varix moved to the eastern ridge. He needed to see the aftermath with his own sensors. The human position was a disaster. Bodies lay everywhere. Wounded soldiers leaned against rocks, receiving medical treatment. Blood covered the stones. The smell was terrible, even to Varix, who had no real sense of smell. But the humans were cheering. Varix found Captain Han standing on the highest point of the ridge, looking out at the retreating Ravagers. The captain had a cut across his face. His armor was scorched and dented. "We held," Han said when he noticed Varix approaching. "You lost 40% of your forces," Varix said. "This is a victory?" "We held," Han repeated. "They threw everything at us and we didn't break. Yes, observer, this is a victory." Varix looked around. "Your soldiers fight when they should be dead." "Yeah," Han smiled. It was a tired smile. "That's kind of our thing." "I do not understand. Pain should stop you. Injury should disable you." "Should," Han agreed. "But we decided a long time ago that should doesn't apply to us." Varix watched as 2 human soldiers helped Private Kai to the medical tent. The young soldier was still conscious, still joking with his rescuers, even though he had lost enough blood to kill most species. Lieutenant Nari walked past, her remaining arm in a sling. She was reading a tactical display, already planning for the next attack. Varix's database said she should be in surgery. Instead, she was working. "You are not a logical species," Varix observed. Captain Han laughed. It was a harsh sound. "No, we're really not. The Ravagers are about to learn that lesson. They will return with greater numbers. Let them." Han looked at Varix with those sharp human eyes. "We're just getting started. You know what we learned today, observer?" "What?" "The Ravagers can be hurt. They can be stopped. And they don't know what to do when their prey fights back." Han turned back to look at his troops. "We spent 10,000 years as prey animals on Earth, running from things with bigger teeth, sharper claws, stronger bodies. You know how we survived?" Varix did not answer. "We refused to be prey, even when we should have been." Han's expression hardened. "The Ravagers are predators. They've been hunting the galaxy for cycles and everyone runs from them. Well, they've never hunted humans before." In the medical tent, someone started singing. Other voices joined in. It was a human war song, rough and defiant. The wounded sang along with the healthy. Varix sent his preliminary report to Coalition Command that night. He kept it brief and factual, but he added one observation that troubled him deeply. "The humans do not fight like soldiers. They fight like wounded animals, more dangerous in pain than in health. If this is what they consider just getting started, I fear what they will do when truly provoked." He sent the report and returned to observation. The Ravagers would attack again at dawn, and Varix would watch the humans do the impossible once more. He was beginning to understand why Captain Han had smiled when talking about the enemy. The humans weren't scared of the Ravagers. The Ravagers just didn't know they should be scared of humans. The siege began on the 3rd day. The Ravagers had learned that direct assault was costly, so they changed tactics. They surrounded the coalition positions and waited. It was a sound strategy. Every species needed rest. Every species had limits. Every species except humans, apparently. Varix watched the other coalition forces struggle with the extended engagement. The Kalthari required 6 hours of meditation every cycle to maintain their crystalline structure. The Voss needed to return to their ships every 12 hours to replenish their methane reserves. Even the hardy Droneth had to rest after extended combat. The humans simply rotated shifts. "It's called a watch system," Corporal Una explained to Varix on the 4th day. She was eating something called a ration bar while checking her weapon. 1/3 sleeps, 1/3 rests, 1/3 fights. "We can keep this up indefinitely." "Indefinitely?" Varix questioned. His database said most species began to deteriorate mentally after 3 days without proper rest. "Well, not literally forever," Una admitted, "but longer than the bugs can wait." She smiled. "We evolved to do this." Varix accessed his cultural database on humans. What he found was disturbing. On their homeworld, ancient humans had hunted by simply following their prey for days. Not faster than their prey, not stronger. They simply never stopped. They walked after running animals until the animals collapsed from exhaustion. "You are persistence predators," Varix said aloud. "Yeah." Una finished her ration and stood. "Our ancestors hunted by being too stubborn to quit. Some things don't change." She picked up her weapon. "My shift's starting. Nice talking to you, Observer." She walked toward the perimeter. She had been awake for 18 hours, fought for 6, rested for 4, and was now going back to fight for another 6. Her vital signs showed fatigue, but nothing critical. Varix checked the other human soldiers. The pattern was the same. They were tired, yes, but they kept moving, kept fighting, kept existing in a state of semi-exhaustion that would break any other species. The Ravagers seemed to expect the coalition to weaken. They probed the defenses constantly, testing for signs of collapse. The Kalthari positions showed strain. The Voss were running low on atmospheric supplies. The human positions seemed to get stronger. On the 5th day, something changed. The humans began making noise. Varix first noticed it during the night cycle. Sound was echoing across the valley. Music. Humans were playing music from their positions. Loud, aggressive music with heavy rhythms and shouting vocals. "What are they doing?" the Kalthari commander asked over the command channel. Captain Han answered, "Keeping ourselves awake and annoying the enemy. This is not standard military protocol." "No," Han agreed. "But it works." The music continued all night. Varix observed the Ravagers' response. The creatures seemed agitated. They were used to silence from prey. The constant noise disrupted their patterns. Then the humans started talking to them. Private Kai's voice boomed across the battlefield through a loudspeaker. "Hey, Bugs! You look tired. You want to take a nap? We'll wait." Laughter from the human positions. Another voice. Sergeant Tay. "My grandmother fights better than you, and she's 80 years old." More laughter. The Ravagers charged the human positions in response. It was exactly what the humans wanted. The Ravagers wasted energy on emotional attacks instead of strategic ones. The human defenses held easily. Lieutenant Nari, still fighting with one arm, organized the psychological warfare. "Keep them angry," she told her troops. "Angry enemies make mistakes." Varix was horrified and fascinated. Warfare was supposed to be logical, strategic. The humans were treating it like a game, like sport. "Do you feel no fear?" he asked Captain Han on the 6th day. Han was drinking something called coffee. The beverage smelled terrible to Varix's sensors. "Of course we feel fear," Han said. "We're scared all the time." "Then why do you joke? Why make music?" "Because being scared is boring." Han took another drink. "We learned a long time ago that if you're going to be terrified, you might as well have fun with it. Makes the time pass faster." On the 7th day, Corporal Una led a reconnaissance team into Ravager-held territory. The mission parameters were simple: gather intelligence on enemy positions and return. The estimated time was 6 hours. Yuna's team stayed out for 72 hours. Varix monitored their progress through their comm signals. He listened as they moved through enemy territory, mapping positions, counting forces, identifying weak points. They operated on minimal sleep and limited supplies. Any coalition team would have returned after 12 hours. Anything longer was considered impossible. Yuna's team stayed out for 3 full days. When they finally returned, they had walked over 200 kilometers through hostile terrain. They had avoided Ravager patrols, mapped 17 enemy positions, and identified the location of what appeared to be a command node. Yuna delivered her report to Captain Han. She had lost weight. Her face was hollow with exhaustion. But her voice was steady as she provided detailed intelligence. "Good work," Han said. "Now go sleep." "Yes, sir." Yuna saluted and walked to the rest area. She was asleep within minutes. Varix approached Han. "That should have been impossible. 3 days in enemy territory with minimal rest." "Should have been," Han agreed. "But Yuna's done longer training exercises. This was actually easier. At least she was shooting at real targets." "Your species makes no sense." Han smiled. "We get that a lot." The pattern continued. While other coalition forces struggled with the siege, the humans adapted. They turned the waiting game into their advantage. They were built for endurance, built to outlast. On the 10th day, something unprecedented happened. The Ravagers pulled back, not a retreat, not a withdrawal to regroup. They actually created distance between themselves and the coalition positions. "They're confused," Lieutenant Nari observed, studying the tactical displays. She had adapted remarkably well to fighting with one arm. "They don't understand why we're not weakening." Captain Han nodded. "They're used to overwhelming numbers breaking their enemies. But we're not breaking. We're not even slowing down." Sergeant Tay entered the command post. "Sir, the troops are getting bored. They're asking permission to organize a football game." "A what?" the Kalthari commander asked. "Human sport," Han explained. "Involves running and tackling." He considered. "Permission granted. Keep it to the rear positions and keep sentries on duty." "Yes, sir." Varix followed Tay to observe this football game. What he saw disturbed him deeply. Humans who had been fighting for 10 days straight were now fighting each other for entertainment. They ran, they collided, they fell and got back up, all while laughing. "This is recreation?" Varix asked. Private Kai, now recovered from his earlier wounds, grinned. "Best kind, gets the blood flowing." The game continued. The humans played with the same intensity they brought to combat. Varix realized this was training. They were maintaining their aggression, their physicality, their unit cohesion, all through play. "You cannot stop, can you?" Varix said to no one in particular. Corporal Yuna, watching the game, heard him. "Stop what?" "Moving, fighting, existing in a state of constant activity." She thought about it. "I guess not. Sitting still feels wrong. We need to do something. Even if it's just playing games or making noise. This is why you survived on your world." "Yeah," she smiled. "The things that sat still got eaten. The things that kept moving survived. After a few million years, we got really good at moving." That night, Varix compiled another report. He included observations about human endurance, their psychological warfare tactics, and their inability to remain passive. He ended with a troubling note. "The humans have turned the siege into their natural environment. They thrive in extended conflict. The Ravagers expect enemies to weaken over time. The humans do the opposite. I believe we may have introduced a species to the war that cannot be outlasted." On the 11th day, the Ravagers attacked in force again. But something was different. Their assault was less coordinated, more desperate. They were trying to end the siege quickly. The humans recognized it immediately. "They're breaking," Captain Han said with satisfaction. "They can't handle the waiting anymore. The battle was fierce but short. The Ravagers committed heavily and lost more than they gained. By nightfall, they were retreating. Not pulling back. Retreating. It was the first time in the entire war that Ravagers had shown anything like fear. They were leaving the field to an enemy they couldn't understand. An enemy that simply refused to stop. Varix watched them go. Then he turned to observe the humans. They were exhausted, wounded, depleted, but they were celebrating. "We broke them!" Kai shouted. "Did you see them run?" Sergeant Tay was smiling. "They finally figured it out. You can't wait out a human. We don't stop." Lieutenant Nari, one-armed and victorious, raised her remaining fist. "Not ever!" The human troops cheered. They had been under siege for 11 days. They had fought while wounded, stayed awake while others slept, and turned warfare into psychological torture for their enemy. And they were happy. Varix understood now. This was what made humans dangerous. Not their technology, not their tactics, their refusal to quit, their absolute stubborn persistence in the face of any obstacle. They were exactly what Sergeant Tay had said. They didn't stop. Ever. The galaxy had never encountered a species like this, and Varix was beginning to think the galaxy wasn't ready for them. The disaster happened on day 14. A human squad got cut off behind enemy lines. It was supposed to be a simple patrol, just 4 soldiers checking the northern sector for Ravager activity. Then the ground collapsed. An old mining tunnel gave way beneath them, and they fell into the caverns below. Right into Ravager territory. The squad was led by Corporal Bin, a quiet human who rarely spoke but was known for his steady nerves. With him were Medic Hana, Engineer Wu, and Private Sue. 4 soldiers trapped underground, surrounded by unknown numbers of Ravagers. Their distress signal reached Coalition Command within minutes. Varix was in the command center when Captain Han received the news. "We have their position," Lieutenant Nari said, pointing to the tactical map. 3 kilometers behind enemy lines, 40 meters underground. Ravager forces are converging on their location. The Kalthari commander shook her head. "They are lost. We cannot reach them in time." "They have perhaps 1 hour before the Ravagers find them," the Voss officer added. "I suggest we mark them as casualties and focus on defending our current positions." Captain Han was very quiet. That should have been Varix's first warning sign. Humans were loud when happy and loud when fighting. When they went quiet, something was about to happen. "No," Han said simply. "Captain, be reasonable." "I said no." Han's voice was soft but absolute. "We don't leave our people behind. The tactical situation makes rescue impossible." "I don't care." Han turned to Nari. "Organize a rescue team. Volunteers only." "Sir." Nari snapped a salute. Within minutes, she was gone. The Kalthari commander tried again. "Captain Han, I understand your sentiment, but 4 lives against the safety of the entire base is not a calculation I'm willing to make." Han's expression was hard. "You don't understand. This isn't about tactics or numbers. This is about who we are." Varix followed Captain Han to the staging area. He needed to understand this human behavior. It defied all military logic. Lieutenant Nari was already assembling the rescue team. Varix expected a small, elite group. Instead, nearly 50 humans had volunteered. More were arriving every minute. "Sir, we've got more volunteers than we can use," Nari reported. "Turn no one away," Han said, "but keep the team small and fast. 12 people maximum. Tay, you're leading." Sergeant Tay nodded. "Yes, sir. We'll bring them home." Varix noticed something. Many of the volunteers were wounded. Private Kai was there, still recovering from his chest injury. A soldier named Jun had bandages on his legs. Another Ho had burns on his arms. "Why are injured soldiers volunteering?" Varix asked. Kai looked at him like he'd asked why water was wet. "Because Bin's squad is trapped. Doesn't matter if we're hurt." But you lower the mission success probability. We don't leave people behind, Kai interrupted. That's not negotiable. Ever. Tay selected his team, 12 humans, half of them carrying injuries that should have kept them off duty. They geared up quickly, checking weapons and equipment with practiced efficiency. Varix approached Captain Han. I want to accompany the rescue team. Han looked surprised. Why? Scientific observation. I need to understand human behavior in these circumstances. Han studied him for a long moment. Okay, but stay close to the team and do exactly what they say. This is going to be dangerous. Varix joined the rescue team as they moved out. They traveled fast, moving through territory the Coalition had abandoned. Ravager patrols were everywhere. The humans avoided them when possible, eliminated them quickly when not. Varix marveled at their efficiency. These soldiers had been fighting for 2 weeks straight. Many were wounded, but they moved through enemy territory like precision instruments. Why risk so much for 4 soldiers? Varix asked Tay during a brief rest stop. Tay was checking his ammunition. He answered without looking up. Because they do it for us. Because that's the deal. We watch each other's backs. Always. Even unto death? Especially unto death. Tay finally looked at Varix. You want to know what makes humans different? It's not our tech or our tactics. It's this. We'll die for each other before we leave each other behind. They reached the collapsed mining tunnel after 3 hours of hard movement. The entrance was a jagged hole in the ground. Varix's sensors detected movement below. Lots of movement. Ravagers are already in the tunnels, reported June, who was monitoring the tactical scanner. Then we go in fast, Tay said. Combat formation. Hana, you're with me on point. A female human stepped forward. This was Medic Hana from the Trapped Squad's sister unit. Ready, Sergeant. They descended into darkness. The tunnels were narrow and twisting. Varix's crystalline structure scraped against the walls. He had to dim his natural luminescence to avoid giving away their position. The first Ravagers came at them in the tunnels. The humans fought in close quarters with brutal efficiency. No room for long-range weapons here. They used knives, short blades, even their hands when necessary. Varix watched Private Kai fight a Ravager in a space barely wide enough for both of them. Kai couldn't maneuver, couldn't dodge. So he simply grabbed the creature and held on while another human shot it. Keep moving, Tay ordered. They found the first body 10 minutes later. A Ravager killed with standard human weapons. Bin's team has been fighting, Hana observed. They're still alive. The team moved faster. More bodies appeared, all Ravagers. The trapped squad was holding out, but they couldn't last forever. Then they heard it. Weapons fire ahead. Human weapons. Double time! Tay shouted. They emerged into a larger cavern. Varix's sensors immediately cataloged the scene. 4 humans were pinned in a defensive position against the far wall. At least 20 Ravagers were pressing the attack. The humans were almost out of ammunition. The rescue team didn't hesitate. They hit the Ravagers from behind with overwhelming force. The cavern became chaos. Weapons fire, screaming, the sound of carapaces cracking. Varix watched Lieutenant Nari, still fighting with one arm, coordinate the attack with hand signals. Watched Private Kai throw himself between a Ravager and the trapped soldiers. Watched Medic Hana reach Engineer Wu and immediately begin treating his wounds while still under fire. The fight lasted 4 minutes. When it ended, all the Ravagers were dead. Bin, Tay called out. You okay? Corporal Bin emerged from cover. His armor was shredded. His face was covered in blood. Took you long enough, Sergeant. Tay laughed. Actually laughed. Traffic was bad. Let's move before more bugs show up. Getting out was harder than getting in. The trapped squad was in bad shape. Engineer Wu had a broken leg. Medic Hana from the original squad had lost a lot of blood. Private Sue was barely conscious. The rescue team carried them. Private Kai took Wu on his back despite his own injuries. Other humans supported Su between them. They moved slower now, burdened with wounded. Ravagers found them twice on the way out. Both times, the humans formed a protective circle around their wounded and fought with desperate ferocity. Varric saw soldiers taking hits that should have killed them, staying on their feet through sheer will. They emerged from the tunnels as night fell. Coalition forces were waiting to provide covering fire. The humans made it back to base with all 16 members of the combined team alive. The cost was severe. 8 soldiers needed immediate surgery. 5 more had serious injuries. The mission had cost them more casualties than a week of defensive fighting. In the medical tent, Varric found Captain Han visiting the wounded. Corporal Bin was on a medical bed, hooked to various machines. "Thank you, sir," Bin said quietly. "Don't thank me. Thank your brothers and sisters who came to get you." Han gestured to the other wounded around them. "This is what we do. This is who we are." Varric approached. "You lost more soldiers on this rescue than you saved." "We didn't lose anybody," Han corrected. "Everyone came home. Some of them are hurt, but they're home. The tactical cost—" "I don't care about the tactical cost." Han's voice was firm. "You keep asking me about numbers and probability, but humans don't work like that. We fight harder for each other than we fight for ourselves. We take wounds for each other. We die for each other. Because that's the deal. No one gets left behind. Ever." Later, Varric compiled his report. He struggled to find words to explain what he had witnessed. Finally, he wrote, "Human pack bonding behavior defies all military logic. They will sacrifice tactical advantage for a single soldier. They will accept severe casualties to recover their wounded. This should be a weakness. Instead, it is their greatest strength. Human soldiers fight with absolute certainty that their comrades will come for them. This removes fear of death. They know they will not die alone and forgotten. This makes them functionally fearless in combat. Other species fight for territory, resources, or survival. Humans fight for each other. I now understand why they cannot be broken. To break human forces, you would have to make them abandon each other. And I do not believe this is possible." In the medical tent, someone started singing. The wounded took up the song, then the healthy joined in. Even in pain, even facing more battles tomorrow, the humans sang together. Varric watched and finally understood. The humans didn't just fight as a unit. They were a unit. Inseparable. Unbreakable. Not because they were fearless, but because they feared abandoning each other more than they feared death. And that made them the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Day 21 brought the final battle. Long-range sensors detected the entire Ravager hive fleet moving toward Thresh 9. Every ship, every soldier, everything they had left in this sector. Coalition Command immediately ordered evacuation. "The position is lost," the Kalthari commander announced. "All forces retreat to the outer defensive line." Captain Han stood in the command center, looking at the tactical display. The numbers were impossible. The Ravagers outnumbered Coalition forces 10 to 1, maybe 20 to 1. The fleet approaching could destroy everything on Thresh 9. "The human contingent will remain," Han said calmly. Every commander in the room turned to look at him. "Captain, this is not a debate," the Voss officer said. "The planet cannot be held." "You're right," Han agreed. "It can't be held. But we're staying anyway." "That is suicide." Han smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Probably, but we're going to make them pay for it." The Coalition forces evacuated. Ships lifted off carrying the Kalthari, Voss, and Droneth soldiers. They left behind supplies, ammunition, and defensive positions. They also left behind 3,000 human soldiers who refused to leave. Varric had a choice. He could evacuate with the Coalition. It was the logical decision. The humans were about to die, and observing their deaths served no scientific purpose. He stayed. "You're going to get yourself killed," Lieutenant Nari told him. She was preparing defensive positions with her one remaining arm. "I need to see how this ends," Varric said. "How it ends is we all die fighting," Nari said. "But thanks for staying. It means something." The human defensive strategy was insane. Instead of consolidating forces, they spread out across the entire operational area. Every position was undermanned, every line was vulnerable. "What are you doing?" Varric asked Captain Han. "Making them commit everywhere," Han explained. "If we bunch up, they just overwhelm one position. Spread out, we make them divide their forces. We hurt them as badly as possible before we go down. This is a suicide mission." "Yeah," Han checked his weapon. "But it's our suicide mission. We get to decide how we die, and we're going to take a lot of bugs with us." Sergeant Tay gathered the troops that evening. 3,000 humans stood in the twilight of Thresh 9, knowing they would likely not see another dawn. "We all know what tomorrow brings," Tay said. His voice carried across the assembly. "The brass gave us a choice, retreat or fight. We chose to fight. Why?" "Because someone has to," a soldier shouted. "Because we're human," another called out. Tay nodded. "Because if we run, the Ravagers follow. They hit the next world, then the next. But if we make them bleed here, if we hurt them so badly they hesitate, we buy time for the galaxy." Private Kai spoke up. "And because we're too stubborn to run." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Dark laughter, but real. "Tomorrow," Tay continued, "we show them what humans can do. We show them why Earth spent millions of years being scared of us before we became civilized. We show them that even when we lose, we make sure the other side loses too." Captain Han stepped forward. "I'm proud of all of you. Not because you're going to die. That's not something to be proud of. But because you chose to stand. Because you looked at impossible odds and said, okay, let's make it interesting. That's what makes us human." He pulled up a holographic display. "High Command has designated our mission as Operation Payback." I like that name, because that's what we're doing tomorrow, making the Ravagers pay for every world they've taken, every species they've destroyed. They're going to learn that killing humans is expensive. Varric accessed his cultural database again. He found something called mutually assured destruction, an ancient human military doctrine. If we can't win, we make sure you can't either. The humans had almost destroyed themselves with this concept. Now they were using it against the Ravagers. That night, Varric walked through the human positions. Soldiers were writing letters that would never be sent, making recordings for families they'd never see again, sharing stories and laughter in the face of certain death. Corporal Yuna was playing cards again, the same group from the first night, minus 2 who had died in earlier fighting. They were betting rations they'd never get to eat. "Observer!" Yuna called out. "Want to join?" Varric sat with them. They taught him the rules of their game. He lost every hand. His crystalline structure made it impossible to hide his cards effectively. The humans found this hilarious. "Do you fear tomorrow?" Varric asked during a break in the game. "Terrified," Yuna admitted. "But I'm with my people. That makes it bearable." "We die together," Private Kai added. "That's better than living alone." The attack came at dawn. The sky darkened with Ravager ships. Drop pods fell like rain. The ground shook with the impact of thousands of enemy soldiers. The humans opened fire from every position. They had seeded the approach zones with every mine, every trap, every explosive they could salvage. The Ravagers walked into a killing field. Varric was assigned to Captain Han's command post. He watched the tactical displays as human positions lit up across the map. Each one was outnumbered. Each one was fighting. Each one was inflicting terrible casualties. "Eastern Ridge is being overrun," reported a tactical officer. It was Private Sue, recovered enough from her injuries to return to duty. "Tell them to fall back to secondary positions," Han ordered. Make the bugs pay for every meter. The battle became chaos. Varix lost track of individual engagements. The displays showed human positions falling one by one, but each position took down dozens, sometimes hundreds of Ravagers before going silent. Lieutenant Nari's voice came over the comm. North Sector is gone, falling back to the mining complex. Acknowledged, Han said. How many did you get? At least 300. There was pride in her voice. They're learning to fear our positions. Then came the critical moment. Long-range sensors detected the Ravager hive ship approaching. It was massive, a living vessel that coordinated the entire swarm. Destroy it, and the Ravager forces would lose cohesion. It's suicide to attack that thing, the tactical officer said. Good thing we're planning to die anyway, Han replied. He activated the general comm. All forces, this is Captain Han. We've identified the hive ship. I need volunteers for a special mission. Define special, Sergeant Tay's voice came back. The kind you don't come back from. There was a pause. Then, I volunteer. I'm in, Corporal Yuna said. Count me in, from Private Kai. More voices, dozens of them. Varix counted 83 volunteers in the first minute. I only need 12, Han said quietly. Tay, pick your team. Varix watched as Sergeant Tay selected his suicide squad. 12 humans who would fly a captured Ravager shuttle directly into the hive ship and destroy it from inside. The chances of success were minimal. The chances of survival were zero. They geared up without hesitation, strapped on every explosive they could carry. Said quick goodbyes to their comrades. Observer, Tay said, approaching Varix. If anyone survives this mess, tell them we went down fighting. I will tell them you went down destroying your enemy, Varix replied. Tay smiled. Even better. The suicide squad launched in a captured Ravager vessel. Varix monitored their progress through the tactical net. They penetrated the hive ship's defenses by exploiting Ravager recognition signals, fought through internal security, reached the central chamber. Then their signals went dead. For 3 minutes, nothing happened. Varix feared they had failed. Then the hive ship exploded. It went up in a fireball visible from the surface. The shockwave destroyed 6 smaller Ravager vessels. And across the battlefield, the Ravager forces suddenly became disorganized. Without the hive ship's coordination, they were just individual creatures operating on instinct. The humans immediately exploited the confusion. Every remaining position opened up with everything they had. The disciplined retreat became a fighting stand. Captain Han was on the comm, coordinating the counterattack. Pour it on! Make them regret waking up this morning! The Ravager fleet began to withdraw. They were still overwhelming in numbers, but without coordination, they couldn't effectively use those numbers. Coalition reinforcements arrived 6 hours later. They found a battlefield covered in Ravager corpses, and they found 900 human soldiers still alive, still fighting, still refusing to quit. The casualty list was devastating. 2,100 humans dead, 1,200 wounded. But the Ravager hive fleet was destroyed. Their forces in this sector were scattered and leaderless. The war had turned. Varix found Captain Han in the medical tent. The captain had taken shrapnel in the final hours. Nothing fatal, but painful. Your species is insane, Varix said without preamble. Yep. Han didn't argue. You knew most of you would die. Yep. And you stayed anyway. Had to. Han looked at Varix with tired eyes. Someone had to make a stand. Might as well be us. We're good at hopeless stands. Why? Han thought for a moment. Because we're not just willing to die, observer. We've weaponized dying. We make sure that killing us costs so much, our enemies hesitate to try. We make our death so expensive that sometimes it's cheaper to leave us alone. Varix processed this. You turn your mortality into a weapon. Exactly. We all die eventually. Might as well make it count. In the following days, Coalition Command offered humanity a permanent seat on the War Council. They offered fleet support, advanced technology, resource rights. Captain Han had only one request: name the next offensive Operation Payback. They agreed. Varix compiled his final report weeks later. He struggled to summarize everything he had witnessed. Finally, he wrote, "Humans are not the strongest species in the galaxy. They are not the smartest. Their technology is average. Their natural abilities are unremarkable. But they are unkillable in spirit and unbreakable in will. They fight like the universe owes them a debt. They refuse to acknowledge when they should be dead. They persist when any logical being would quit.